It was certainly a war of words Wednesday night in Milwaukee at the first 2024 Republican presidential debate, happening in the midst of two major political scandals: the former President Trump's his 4 indictments, and the increasing likelihood President Biden will face an impeachment inquiry over bribery and more. So how do all they do in the midst of all of this, and do any of them have what it takes to surpass the man who has dominated GOP politics for the last 8 years? Let's ask the man who ran perhaps the most successful presidential campaign in history, former President Ronald Reagan's 1984 landslide, former Reagan advisor and Republican strategist, Ed Rollins. Ed, wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Tom. Nice to be on. Thanks for having me.
Ed, so you managed that 84 campaign. Reagan carried 49 out of 50 states. However, you fast forward 40 years to a very deeply divided America. It's very different here today. And you have the leading GOP candidate for president under 4 indictments that Americans believe are politically motivated. I want to ask you about the Democrats first. Do you believe that they're overshooting here and that we're going to see a backlash actually at the ballot box?
They're trying to sell something that's not saleable. That's Biden. Biden didn't live up to the expectations Democrats had for him. He's got a lot of the traditional big spending programs, but they're not particularly working. And he himself can't perform at a very high level anymore. He basically stumbles every time. And I'm sure, as a former White House political advisor, every time you send your candidate out, you want to make sure he performs well. I think every time they send their candidate out, they worry about whether he's going to stumble down the stairs of the Air Force One or whether he's going to say something inappropriate. So my sense is they've got to hide him as they did the last time. And the key thing for us is not to let them do that. Make sure that his policies are out there in the open and we contrast them.
A lot of Americans do believe that these prosecutions are politically motivated. Not commenting on that one way or the other, but that's what they believe, and they believe that the Democratic Party, that this is part of their strategy for 2024. So do you think that people will recoil against that?
My sense is there's almost an overkill. I'm not going to argue the merits of the indictments, but when you got 91 of them against a man who's basically not a president of the United States, that's never been indicted, the president's never been indicted before, it seems like overkill. You're going to have 4 major trials at least, and I think to a certain extent people don't see it as fairness. And whether you like Trump or not like Trump, and Republicans obviously still like Trump, it's just not a winning strategy. And the reality is, in politics, there are controllables and there are uncontrollables. The controllables are your media, your TV, what have you. Right. This is all the uncontrollables. The uncontrollables are these court cases that we have no idea what direction they're going to take. And the president obviously is going to make his whole campaign around fighting them, right, which he has to do to stay out of jail. But I don't know how that's going to react to the American public. The Republicans are going to be solidly behind them.
I want to move on to foreign policy, Ed. That was certainly an important part of that 84 presidential politics as the Cold War raged on. And it was Ronald Reagan's peace through strength doctrine that was really a guiding principle in the 1980s. Yet there's there seems to be a bit of a referendum on that doctrine within the GOP, being led by proponents of sort of a more isolationist approach. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley called that out on Wednesday night. Watch this.
Once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today. He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the Russian ambassador suddenly died. This guy is a murderer, and you are choosing a murderer over a pro-American country. You want to
let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up.
You want to go and give Ukraine Russia? You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what?
It shows.
Your thoughts, Ed, on the GOP appearing to kind of move past that Reagan doctrine in recent years, even though it was given a pretty full-throated defense by Ambassador Haley?
She did an excellent job of defending the positions that Reagan took. The critical thing is what we had to do with the Reagan administration. We had to rebuild the defenses of the country. We were at a point where planes couldn't fly and soldiers and sailors were on welfare. And in the post-Vietnam era, we were in a very crippled position. The Soviet Union was still united instead of still strong. Today, Trump has built up a very effective armed services And obviously there's a big debate whether we should be in as aggressively as we are in the NATO activities without full support of other countries. But my sense is it will be a smaller part of the debate than people think in the campaign, and it shouldn't be. It should be an important part.
All right, well, Ed, we do hope to have you back. I'm up against a hard break, but we
Anytime.
really appreciate.
Happy to come, and appreciate it. Appreciate all you've done, Tom, for the party.
Well, thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate that.